thank all of you, especially Mohsin Dawar sahab, who came from Pakistan, especially for this purpose, and Dr. Dibyesh Anand and Ayesha Aijaz, and all the representatives of press here in London. And I am your co-host. My name is Tanvir, and on behalf of Pakistan Solidarity Campaign, which is initiative on the part of political workers from Pakistan who are here in UK, and we try to show our solidarity with the downtrodden and oppressed people of Pakistan, irrespective of their ethnicity, their geographical background, and we do whatever we can for advocacy of their basic human rights that are guaranteed under Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan and all the international covenant, especially UDHR and Bills of Rights. So according to that framework, we try whatever is possible for us, and this talk on Pashtun Tahafuz Movement, Mohsin Dawar on right-based struggle in Pakistan is one part of that, and I am especially thankful to Dr. Dibyesh Anand for hosting this event on behalf of Center of Study of Democracy, University of Westminster, London. I think you is aware of the Pashtun Tahafuz Movement. No need to introduce. For me, it is a natural and spontaneous result of the events that have been taking place there in federally administered tribal area in Pakistan for almost 2 decades. And there are generations who have grown up to see all that turmoil and disturbances and displacement and war and heavily bombardment from the state machinery of Pakistan. And the most tragic thing about that situation in FATA is that we don't have any credible way to know what is happening there because of the complete or semi-blackout most of the time. And it is through, personal resources that we can have a picture, but I don't claim to have a clear picture, frankly. This talk, I think, would make us better aware of the situation, and it is part of our struggle to continue the dialogue and situation analysis and find the whatever possible solution for us and engage the people in advocacy and awareness about their rights within our limited resources. Obviously, it is private individual. It is not any funded activity or any. We are just work people from working class here in the UK. So one of our other initiatives is that to engage the students, young people, and especially the students in the universities of UK who are Pakistani, from Pakistani origin, and we are in the process of starting a perception survey on the human rights situation in Pakistan, and it is not very encouraging. I regret to intimate that the situation is the situation of awareness of the rights is not so encouraging, even among the educated youth. So it is our duty to make them aware. So we are in a process of completing that perception survey, and starting a course, a syllabus to make them aware, starting from the student here and then eventually in Pakistan. It would be web-based courses, online courses in PDF format or eventually maybe in video form, to at least to make them aware. And I mean, they could come to know what are the circumstances and what are the causes that that result in that huge violation of human rights in Pakistan. The state of Pakistan has never been pro-people throughout our history, and it is a very sad reality of our society, we must admit, and we should do whatever we can for its to remedy the situation. So I won't take very long, so I will hand over to Dr. Dibyesh Anand to invite the guests, and I thank all of my honored guests.
Thank you, Pakistan Solidarity Campaign, for first approaching me about this thing. And the context, from some of you may know me, most of you will not. I'm Professor Dibyesh Anand. I'm from the Center for Study of Democracy, University of Westminster. And the reason why we were quite keen on hosting this, of course, we knew about the PTM movement, but more crucially, we have been supporting, and I'm saying we are very clear, supporting rights-based movements in different parts of the world. So we have been a department in a school that has hosted the Dalai Lama from Tibet. We've hosted Parveena Ahangar, who is an activist from Indian occupied Kashmir, whose son was disappeared by the Indian state, and she has been fighting for the rights of the parents whose children have been disappeared. We invited her 3 different times in various points in time. If you look at this key, anyone knows what this is? This is Palestine-related thing. 1948, so when many Palestinians left the homeland, they thought they'll come back to the home. So they went with the key thinking they're going to come back, and they have never returned. So this is partly to remember Nakba, the catastrophe that happened vis-a-vis there. So you could see Palestine, we're talking of Kurdistan. So personally, my own research is largely around Hindu nationalism and Hindu fascism in India. Research is around Tibet and rights in China. It is around the Indian occupation of Kashmir. It's a colonial practice of post-colonial states. That's my own research. Within our school, and I think we would be rare school and rare department that has various people working on the rights of different groups in different parts of the world, who are looking after not only constitutional kind of thing which you are part of, but also those who don't belong to the state, don't feel they belong to the state. I'm giving an example of Kashmir, right? We are unapologetic about hosting events that are talking of rights, because there's a strong disconnect between, and you highlighted that, there's a strong disconnect between people and the state in various parts of the world. So the agenda, therefore, for us is to humanize the state. So the way I see PTM, and I've been following what the kind of thing you've done, it's trying to humanize the state. It's trying to make the state a better place, right? It's trying to fulfill the potential of the state. And yet, of course, the reaction, you would know more, and I'll leave the main speaker to talk about it, but look at the way in which state is controlled by, hijacked by special interest group, then who claim to speak for the state, right? So my hope is, and of course I'll leave to the speakers to talk about it, and of course it's going to be brief speeches, then I'll have a couple of questions for the main speaker, then open up to the audience. Few ground rules, please bear that in mind. Switch off your mobile phone in terms of it. You should not get a call or someone saying, oh, which direction to take, that's one. Number 2, and it happens by mistake, so please switch off that or at least put on silent mode. Number 2, and we discussed that we have differences. We're fine if you're recording the speakers here, but please do not turn the camera towards the audience. Do not take photograph of the audience, and that's the reason why we are saying that. Some of you are fine with it, some of you are not comfortable with it, and therefore we would request you all not to take photo of the audience, right? So you can take our photo, you can record us the way you want to, but don't record the audience, that's the important thing. And third, fire exit, we have to tell you can see the fire exit there. If something, alarm goes off, there's no alarm testing going on, so we have to leave the room. It has happened only once, but I'm used to it. Whenever I've organized events related to China and Tibet, we've had fire alarms. And when the Chinese embassy not far from us, I can read the conspiracy there. And final thing I'll point out is, regarding PTM, for me it's about rights-based thing. And as a university, we are quite proud of what we do. We do not believe in dispassionate education of the kind where people can be killed, people can be disappeared, people can be raped, people can be tortured, and we write only theories around it. We strongly believe in giving platform to those in fighting for rights of different people in different parts of the world. We may have own disagreement, that's fine, but the important thing is we give a platform to listen to each other learn from each other. On that note, let me invite next speaker, Ayesha here, because she's the one who, she'll introduce PTM to us, right? And you can also introduce yourself. She's a writer, she's a lawyer, she has written various things, and there's a long bio which I'm not going to read because you've read that on event, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dibyesh. As someone who's been following Pakistan's politics and writing about it for the last 10 to 12 years, I'm fascinated by the fact that we have this grassroots, organic rights movement originating from the tribal areas of Pakistan. The Pashtun Tahafuz Movement represents a people who have lived in a war zone for nearly the last 2 decades. And while it's true that people all over Pakistan have suffered because of the Talibanization and the ensuing war on terror, including, of course, military families and families of police personnel, nevertheless, it is the people of the tribal areas who have suffered the most because it was their area that was affected the most. So first, they suffered at the hands of the Taliban, when they saw death, destruction, displacement, and then they suffered at the hands of the security agencies when they were harassed at checkposts as they were traveling back home, and sometimes picked up and turned into missing people. The PTM is not a very old movement, it's only about a year old, and it really came together when Naqibullah Masood was shot in Karachi, and this only happened in January of last year. It's really in the aftermath of that high-profile murder, because Naqibullah was, as many of you must know, an ethnic Pashtun who was an aspiring model. And he was wrongly profiled as a terrorist and killed in a police encounter. In the aftermath of that murder is when the movement really galvanized. And then many people who had similar stories to tell, mainly Pashtuns, but also some others, came together and started rallying all across Pakistan. What is remarkable, however, is that in spite of all the violence these people have seen, they are committed to non-violence. And they believe in a peaceful means of protest. Despite being provoked several times, the movement has been committed to non-violence, and I hope that that remains the case. In that sense, it's defying a common but unfortunate stereotype, that of the militarized Pashtun. As Manzoor Pashtun recently put it, when the Pashtun carries a gun, he gets coverage. But when he talks of peace, he gets no coverage. For me, this alone is very inspirational, this idea of a non-violent, peaceful Pashtun. And anyone who believes that the National Action Plan should be implemented in Pakistan, as we often hear that it should be, and especially in light of the recent India-Pakistan crisis, also it was reiterated many times that we need to implement the National Action Plan, then movements like PTM should be natural allies in moving young people away from radicalization, extremism, militarization, and towards healthy engagement based on political expression and participation, and very importantly, and the idea that the citizen must ask the state for a guarantee of its rights within the framework of the Pakistani constitution. The other very significant stereotype that this movement defies, and that I personally find very appealing, is the one that Pashtuns like to keep their women away from public life. Yet in PTM we find that many of their high-profile activists are women. I can think of several. Gulala Ismail, for instance, who was a women's rights advocate and has been very active with the PTM. Recently, she was picked up and detained for several hours. Her family did not know where she was because of her affiliation with the PTM, and was only released after a lot of hype was created on social media. Then there is the case of Sana Aijaz, who worked for the state broadcaster, the PTV, and her employment was terminated because she refused to end her affiliation with the PTM, yet she took a stand and she continued to participate in PTM activities. And most importantly, there is Varanga Luni, who is the sister of Arman Luni, who was recently killed in Balochistan, and he of course was a women's rights advocate and a professor in his own right. And soon after his death, we saw in a faraway place like Kila Saifullah, his sister leads a mammoth rally, perhaps the first time in a place like that that a woman has done so. I find these social changes that PTM is really a catalyst for really inspiring and worth paying attention to. And other Pakistanis deserve to know about this movement. They deserve to know about the changes that are coming forth from the Pashtun community. But unfortunately, what we see in Pakistan is a complete media blackout of the movement. I've personally been told by newspaper editors that they cannot run commentary on PTM. They cannot run stories beyond very basic reporting on PTM. So those who actually represent the movement, people like Mohsin, who though he has a place in the national legislature, he represents, of course, the people of North Waziristan in the National Assembly, he cannot go on the media and talk about his movement. And while others who wish to demean or malign the movement have every right to do so. So this is very unfair. Not only is it unfair, it is dangerous. Because by placing media bans, we are not going to disappear the movement. The movement continues to gain traction, not only amongst Pashtuns, but also non-Pashtuns. I would like to mention the case of Amar Ali Jan, a professor from Lahore, who recently came out to protest also the death of Arman Luni, in which case, by the way, no FIR has still been registered. And he called his movement the Pashtun Tahafuz Movement. And he was arrested for about a day. Earlier, he had his invitation to the Fairs International Festival pulled. So by placing bans on the media, by trying to block these voices out from the national discourse, we will not disappear the movement, but we will polarize society. We will create further divisions amongst people instead of unifying them, because they will not know what the other side is saying, and they will have to rely only on a propagandized version. So if we want to strengthen democracy in Pakistan, it is very important that we hear all sides. And if we want to move away from the status quo, and we want to move away from dynastic power structures, then we should encourage movements like PTM. And with that, I think I will pass it on to Mohsin, who can tell us more about the movement and where it is headed.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to everyone for coming here. First of all, I would like to thank Center of Democracy, the University of Westminster, Pakistan Solidarity Campaign, and also a few friends who have, because of whom now today this event has been arranged. I would like to thank Osama Munir, Asim Shah, Tanvir Afzaal, Dr. Dibyesh Anand, and of course Ayesha. Before I go ahead, I would like to pay a rich tribute to one of our very prominent and effective comrade, Arman Luni, who was extrajudicially killed by police almost more than a month ago. And 3 days ago, we have observed the 40th day of his death in almost all the big cities of Pakistan and everywhere in the world. I will use this opportunity to introduce my people and talk with you about my people, Pashtuns, who have been sacrificed over and over again at the altar of greater good. Whether it was our British colonial masters using us as a buffer against the Russians, or presently the Pakistani state using us to gain strategic depth in Afghanistan. To ensure our compliance, we are presently being subjected to tactics that haven't changed much from the colonial times. Thousands of Pashtuns have been declared missing, a word that can be translated as abducted by the state. Thousands more have been murdered extrajudicially by state agencies. Our villages are dotted with landmines left by our military. When we visit Pakistan proper, our ethnicity makes us instant suspects in the eyes of the authorities. When we go back to our villages, we are greeted by outsiders in uniform, interrogating us on why we want to go back to our homes. Human history tells us that there is limit to the patience of any oppressed race or ethnicity. Whether it was the civil rights movement in the United States, South Africa, or anywhere else, there always a tipping point after which a group says enough. The tipping point for the Pashtuns came with the extrajudicial murder, as explained earlier by Ayesha Aijaz. It started with the extrajudicial murder of an inspiring model, Nakibullah Masood, who, like many other Pashtuns, was fleeing the chaos of war for a better life in Karachi. He was part of the exodus that was a direct result of the military operations in that area. His death was also not unique, as thousands before have been killed in the same manner. In fact, his murder, one police officer, Rao Anwar, is suspected to have killed about 444 people extrajudicially, according to an official report. The death of Nakib marked the moment when we Pashtuns said enough. And out of our united resolve came the Pashtun Tahafuz Movement under the leadership of the young, brave, and articulate Manzoor Ahmed Pashtun. The desperation of Pashtuns in Pakistan can be gauged in the demands of fitna. It might come as a shock to this audience that in this day and age, people would ask for such basic demands. Our first demand is to put an end to the extrajudicial killings that are committed by the security forces in the name of fighting terrorism. As I said earlier, Nakib is one of thousands of humans, one of thousands of Pashtuns who have been killed extrajudicially because someone in the uniform declared them as terrorists. Our second demand is regarding the missing persons. These are people who we believe are abducted by state agencies over suspicions of terrorism. Our demand is not to release all such missing people, but at least to present them in the court of law, so that their guilt could be established and those who are innocent be allowed to walk free. I must add here that some of these missing persons have been missing for years, with no information about their whereabouts, and also whether they are dead or alive. Nobody knows about it. One can only imagine what that means for their loved ones. In this regard, I have also submitted a bill in the National Assembly of Pakistan to criminalize the enforced disappearances. But unfortunately, from the last almost 4 months, it always comes on the agenda of the National Assembly on a private member's day. But whenever it comes on the agenda, the House is adjourned. Our third demand is for the removal of landmines from our villages. It so happens that Pakistan military has left behind thousands of landmines in areas that it had declared as clear for the civilians. And the cost of this deadly incompetence is paid mostly by our children in the form of losing limbs and sometimes their lives also. To be clear, we are not demanding an action against those who have left it behind. We just want them to be cleared. But despite these very basic demands, we have been responded with extreme high-handedness by the state. Recently, one of our most active comrades, about whom I spoke in the start of my speech, Arman Loni, who was murdered by a police officer, and the dilemma is that the police is yet to register the first information report of his murder. Before I was coming here, the police head of that province and the reps of the Home Department were called to the Human Rights Committee of Senate. And the Senate Standing Committee for Human Rights has directed the Home Department and the police to lodge the FIR of the murder of Arman Loni. But till now, FIR has not been registered. The only crime of Arman Loni was to arrange a rally against a militant attack on police. Now just imagine, his crime was to arrange a rally against a militant attack on police. And he was charged with cases and he was extrajudicially killed by a police officer. Other friends like Alamzir Masood, who was also whose only crime was just to speak to a rally in Karachi, and he was charged with terrorism clauses. And I myself has also been charged in many cities where we go for our rallies, and where we also demand the same things which I am telling you here. But what happened is that after each and every rally, cases are registered against us. In most of the cases, they include the clauses of terrorism. I still remember that when one of our friend Ali Wazir was attacked in Wana, some of our friends, including myself, we were protesting against that in Islamabad. On the next day, we came to know that the police had registered an FIR against us, which includes the clause of terrorism, 788 clause 7 of Anti-Terrorist Act. So it's a bit strange that in a country where you speak and talk against terrorism, where you condemn a terrorist attack on one of our comrades, you will be charged with a terrorism case.
Shame. Shame.
The infamous, one of our other friends, Arif Wazir and many others are languishing in jails on trumped up charges because the actual crime of sloganeering and protest is not a crime, it's for law in Pakistan. The infamous exit control list, or ECL, which is a list of people barred from leaving Pakistan, has been used as a weapon to punish PTM. I myself, along with my other comrade in National Assembly, Ali Wazir, we were placed on ECL, but luckily our names got removed because of our status as a parliamentarian. But most of our other PTM comrades, they have suffered a lot because of it. Ayesha mentioned the name of Gulana Ismail. She is a known human rights and women rights activist, and she has received many international awards also. Her name was on ECL for a very long time, and luckily yesterday she called me that her name has been removed. Alam Hayat Rihal, one of the other friends, who was the sole earner of his family, who was a professional pharmacist in Dubai. When he came back, his name was placed on ECL, and many other friends, and also the name of Manzoor Ahmed Pashtun, who hasn't yet made his passport. His name has been placed on ECL, along with other many friends. All of this is being justified with the allegations that PTM is being supported by foreign governments. These allegations are coming from some of the highest offices in Pakistan. Well, I will ask the audience here that whether they would need any foreign backing for demanding a fair trial for themselves. Whether you guys would need any foreign backing to demand that the playgrounds and the streets of the place where you are living must be cleaned from landmines. These are the very basic demands which PTM has been asking for. And whether you need any foreign backing to demand that their families not to be slaved, taped and abused on checkpoints and sexually harassed in their homes. These are the very basic demands that any group of people in this day and age would ask for themselves. However, PTM supporters are being branded as traitors in Pakistan for demanding these basic rights. This label of traitor or foreign agent carries with it so many costs. In its essence, it is meant to discredit the person from making his case. But here the state has failed miserably in discrediting the message of PTM amongst Pashtuns. The credit for that in many ways goes to the high-handedness of the state, which has made the message of PTM a clarion call for all Pashtuns in Pakistan who have been victims of the state, and they have come together regardless of their distinctions of race, sect, or even religion. The response is evident in the release of PTM, as despite of all the legal hurdles and the complete media blackout, the PTM has been able to leverage social media to arrange huge rallies across the country. Our gatherings provide a platform for all those whose voices have been muffled by the state. These are gatherings where speakers as well as the audience bond over mutual grief. Some come with the pictures of their missing relatives, others with the details of their loved ones who has been extrajudicially killed, and yet others talk about the imputations of their children who mistook landmines for toys. The stories are endless, and so are the tears. But yet, despite all the grief and anger, there are no call to arms, no threats of violence. The PTM is convinced over one thing, that our movement will remain non-violent, whatever the attitude and the response of the state is against us. The struggle of PTM is within the constitutional parameters of Pakistan, and our aim is to win the rights which are guaranteed by our constitution. Our struggle is that of human rights, and we will not stop until we are considered as equal citizens of the country. The benefits of PTM success will not be limited just to Pashtuns. All the oppressed identities in Pakistan will benefit from it, and in so doing, the continuation of the federation will be ensured. Thank you very much.
A very important speech. I think you highlighted various things. You can have water while I ask you a question. There's a couple of questions before I open it to the audience. The first one would be around, the way you talked about how Pashtuns in general, and of course others, but in your case you're talking Pashtuns, are seen as suspect communities, right? So they are suspected, so it's easier for the state to commit extrajudicial killing because they see them as suspect, especially around the war on terror. Now, how do you respond to someone who say, but you do not represent all Pashtuns because you also have a prime minister who is Pashtun himself? And you have got a number of Pashtuns who are in the Pakistani military, Pakistani state, Pakistani establishment, in all kinds of bureaucracy. So how would you respond to the claim that you only represent few aspects of Pashtun identity, and therefore for you to claim that Pashtuns are suspect community doesn't work because Pashtuns are very complicit with the state government?
Thank you very much. I think when we talk about the extrajudicial killings, when we talk about missing persons, we might not be representing all the Pashtuns in terms of their parliamentary representation. But whatever we have been talking is with facts. When we talk about extrajudicial killings, cases like that.
Sorry. I didn't get your part where you said that the representation of the in the parliament. I didn't get your point.
Okay, can you answer the question?
No. This is part of the question.
Well, I'm saying that, as he said in his question, that there are many Pashtuns in Pakistan, and you are not representing all of them. In response to that, I said that yes, in terms of parliamentary representation, because PTM is a non-parliamentary, and I contested the selection as an independent candidate. But our demand, whatever we have been demanding, is like supported by facts. Nakibullah Masood, the death of Nakibullah Masood is very much like in the broad daylight, and also the GIT, the Joint Investigation Team, constituted after the murder of Nakibullah Masood. It says that Rawal War has been involved in more than 444 such kind of cases, and majority of them are Pashtuns. Similarly, in this war on terror, we have lost many of our tribal elders, like more than 1,000 of our tribal elders have lost their lives. These kind of cases happens, it used to happen on almost daily basis before PTM came into being. But now, whatever is happening, PTM is highlighting it. Nakibullah Masood was killed, it was highlighted, and Arman Buni, he was killed, it has been highlighted, and everybody knows. Still, instead of highlighting it on such a big level, protesting in almost every city of the country, protesting across the world, still the state is yet to register the FIR in the Arman Buni case. Now just imagine in the cases of those people who do not have any political connections and who do not have any political backings, and who the cases which were not heard, or about which only few people know. So just imagine what would have been the fate of those people who do not have any affiliation or whatever happened before the creation of Pashtun Tahafuz Movement.
So the way I see, from what I understand, you're saying that PTM does not claim to represent all Pashtuns, but it claims to represent the rights of all people, including Pashtuns.
Of course, we like some human rights. The name is, we represent, we took the miseries of Pashtuns, but wherever there is human rights violations, we will condemn it.
Okay, thank you. So next question round, you talked about the states.
Could I raise, I think you raised a question very important.
Excuse me, I think you'll get time later.
Continuation of massacres.
You will.
1947. It's not now.
Okay, you're not speaking. Can you let me handle that? If you start raising, 10 people start raising, we can't have a conversation, right? Let me ask him a question, let him respond, and as I said, please make sure I've made it very clear, do not take photograph of the audience. If you cannot understand, please photo mat the audience ka. I can't speak any other language, so you have to manage that. So please don't do it, right? No photograph, no video. Now coming back to the second question for you. In terms of, you talked of the high-handed response by the state, right? In essence, Pakistan state is not the only state that does it. We see Indian state doing it, Bangladesh state doing it, various states do it. Why, in your view, is Pakistani state, when it's dealing with a movement that's very much constitution-based, rights-based, about strengthening Pakistan, why is it responding in a very high-handed manner?
Well, I think the Pakistani state would be in a better position to answer that why they have been treating us like that. But what I think, what I believe is, it is for the first time that somebody has challenged the might of the deep state in Pakistan. That's the only reason which I think. The rest is they can answer better about why are they.
Thank you. In fact, I often joked about this, that the deep state seems to have a very good ally in Narendra Modi in India. So someone like Narendra Modi is making Imran Khan and Pakistan look more decent, and that speaks about Modi. Anyway, coming back to this, now you are here in the UK, as you can imagine. So what would you hope to gain from the Pakistani diaspora, as well as people like us who are not Pakistani but living in the UK? So what would you hope, what kind of solidarity would you expect from people here, including Pakistani diaspora?
Well, all what I would like to get from here is to support in whatever way they can all the human rights movements in Pakistan, because as before the starting of the program, as you have said that all the service is saying that the human rights situation in Pakistan is not very much good. So we have to work on it, and secondly, all the negative perceptions which have been created against PTM. So the diaspora, can play a very positive role in that. As we have talked in the start that there is a complete media blackout for PTM in Pakistan. The only tool we are using is Facebook or Twitter or other tools of social media. So in the proper Pakistan, like in the rest of Pakistan, who only watch who gets an idea and who are influenced by the state narrative which they build from their media, from their print and electronic media. So they can also play a positive role in convincing them that what actually PTM wants and what actually PTM means. Like they have been, spreading too much propaganda against us. The state media, I will talk about the print and specifically the electronic media. They have never given us any kind of coverage. The only time they talk about PTM is when they want to create or make any propaganda against us. But this diaspora,
Which could be blessing in disguise.
so they can get a positive outcome from here if they're convinced. If they're convinced of whatever we talk is, the basic human rights. So this positive, perception can also influence the minds of the people living in Pakistan.
So what you mean is that, we found that a lot, especially in South Asia, is that diaspora has a disproportionate influence on the perception. So in that sense, what you're hoping is people from Pakistan who live here, if they talk about PTM, right, same way people back home would start talking about it, fine. Now in terms of allegations of foreign funding, right, I'm asking this because not only your movement, all kinds of movement, be it Kashmiri independence movement, Kashmir self-determination movement, Baloch movement, Naga movement, any left-wing movement in India against Modi, even secular movements, and you have got PTM, all of us get accused of having foreign funding. When the reality, of course, is the biggest recipient of foreign funding in Pakistan, of course, is the states. They get from China, they get from Saudi Arabia, they get from the US. So I'm giving an example of India because that's where I come from originally. There was anti-nuclear movement which was accused of being foreign funded, except that the nuclear plant was funded by Russia. So again, that's so there's something peculiar about or interesting and discussing about hyper-nationalism in India, Pakistan, and I said they're separate but they're very similar in that sense, where anything that's about rights, it gets seen as foreign funded, right? But in your context, I think there's a particular argument about, they're foreign and they would name Afghanistan in particular, right? And I'm sure if someone looks at my Indian identity, they may start thinking that I have some agenda of trying to host you, which is not the case, right? So why do you think this whole desire to portray you as not indigenous, but funded by foreign comes from? Why is that the case?
Well, there is a very long history of the Pakistani establishment. It's not for the first time they're doing it. Whenever someone has been, started speaking for the rights or something against the state narrative, they have been labeled with a foreign agent and a traitor and things like that. Well, we have many times presented ourselves for any kind of investigation, and we have many times asked to provide us proofs of any foreign funding. But those who are labeling in these allegations are yet to provide any kind of proof, not to us, to the media or to any other blind forcing agency. These are just allegations. And by the way, secondly, I would also like to say that for what does we need funding? Like if you have been come across the rallies of Pashtun Tahafuz Movement, except one or two rallies, we do not even place the chairs in the ground. So all the things, all the equipments which we use in our rallies are one sound system, and the rest is the people, they come on their own expenses, they spend their own money, and not more than like how much will, if you can work to 1 or 1.5 lakh to, I think it is less than
600 pounds.
1,000 pounds?
Yeah.
It's less than 1,000 pounds, which
600
costs
pounds.
us to arrange such a big rally like this one. Because the only thing which we install in these rallies are the sound system, and as I said in the start, that if you have seen the Karachi rally, it has costed us even less than 1 lakh Pakistani rupees, because nobody was giving us, nobody was allowed to give us the sound system, and we have to manage to get it in bits and pieces from one place and other place, and a container and weak sound system. That is all what costed us in arranging a rally, a massive rally in Karachi. So I do not understand that if PTM was using, let's suppose if PTM was using lavish money, you know, and was spending too much money on their events, on their activities, then one could have, you know, asked that, said that there is something coming from somewhere. And secondly, in each rally, we, you know, the boxes for donation, you know, the PTM members, they goes around the entire rally and they takes donations from the people, and those donations are most of the time 5-6 times higher than what have costed us to arrange that rally.
So again, it's interesting. So what you're saying, the rallies cost less than what a general's daughter's wedding would cost. Now, one final question around Pashtun identity again. Like, I mean, so would you say that your movement is it a PTM a movement or more rights-based thing where it's focused on extrajudicial killing? So for instance, if the Pakistani state somehow changes, democratizes, and resolves the issues of enforced disappearance, extrajudicial killing, would that be the end of the movement? And how do you relate to, let's say, the earlier Pashtun movements, including and other movements? How do you relate to that?
Well, I think there is also some kind of base for all the movements. Like we have seen, we have talked about the Khudai ki Madgar. It started against the colonial powers, but it's still going on because the problems keep changing, you know. Today I'm facing some sort of problem. After 10 years, there might be something else. After 20 years, it might be something else. But there is always a strong base for each and every movement. In the case of Khudai ki Madgar, we have mentioned that they were against colonial rule, and they kept going on, and they changed into National Awami Party, then the Awami National Party, but in one shape or other, they're still going on. So I guess the same will be the fate of PTM. The problems keeps changing. Priorities are now what I have just spoken before, the 3-4 demands. This is our priorities now, and the struggle for the human rights will keep going on.
And the final question from me is connected to what you said, is that solidarity with all oppressed identity you mentioned. So for instance, if you take extrajudicial killing, of course you have that in Balochistan, of Baloch, of Sindhis, and now of course also Punjabi, which is getting more attention than the attention was there when Baloch were being disappeared. So I mean, what kind of minefield do you have to negotiate? Because as you can imagine, in some movements they would want separation from Pakistan. Many movements would want more democracy than Pakistan, right? So if, of course, if you have solidarity with those who may want separation, then you get accused of being separated. I'm just wondering, how do you politically negotiate different demands around the same issue, given that different movements have different incentives?
Well, we are focusing on our own objectives, on our own demands. Yes, but as long as human rights violations are concerned, we will condemn each and every human rights violation, irrespective of the movement, irrespective of the identity, with ethnicity. Wherever there is a human rights violation, PTM will condemn it.
Thank you very much. Now we have time for audience question answer. Please keep your questions to question, not comment. And we have
previously missing persons. So my question is slightly a bit, I'll give it a bit of a background. So we, for a fact, know that not a single civilian prime minister in Pakistan, he or she has completed his or her term in the office, whether that prime minister was elected by the people or selected by the almighty GHQ. So they have never completed their term. Yeah.
Bhutto did it.
Except
Yeah,
for
so-
the first term, so please. Just that's an exception.
and
Yeah.
let him ask the question. Even if it's you think it's wrong, it's fine. We'll
Yeah.
tell him later.
So
No, I can't tell him later. He is representing it's a
Okay.
totally
He might
wrong
be completely
question.
wrong, I understand.
Yeah.
Let him ask that that's his right to be wrong, and you can question him later or you can correct that question.
Yeah, we know
Go
him
ahead
very
and
well.
finish that question.
So a state, calling it a state is not justifiable by any, even by Machiavellian standards, so it's basically a failed state of mind. So in a state which does not even recognize the constitution itself, like General Zia famously said that constitution is a piece of paper and I can tear it apart anytime, do you expect the state which does not, or a piece of this constitution itself, to respect the rights which is given by that constitution itself? And the last part is secondly, I would like to suggest and know if PTM is working on the political education at the grassroots level, which is direly needed in Pakistan, because previously we used to have the primary offices of the political parties and secondary offices, but now you don't see anything at all.
Okay, thank you. So question about constitution and second
Yes.
about political education, please.
In response of your first question, well, I think if everything would have been okay, then I think there won't have been any need of PTM. Things are not good, things are not going perfectly, nobody is following the law, nobody is following the constitution. Like if I take the case of the missing persons, we are not demanding, to just let them go. We are demanding a free trial for them. And it has been ensured by the Constitution of Pakistan. Now, as long as you have said that they don't, take care of the elected or selected prime ministers, we will strive for our rights. And with the people's pressure, with the support of our people, pressure which we will create and we have created up to a very big extent. And if that pressure keeps going on, I think nothing is impossible in this world. We have seen the same kind of system in Turkey, and you have seen that how things changed. If people comes out for their rights, I think there is no power in this world which can collide with the power of people, with the power of masses, and with the support and the power of masses, we will force them to follow and accept whatever the demands of PTM. And secondly, the political education. If we talk in the context of the area from where we belong, the ex-Sparta, I think it was at some time one of the most apolitical area, unaware area. But because we have been through all these stages and we have seen all the political ups and downs and all the drama of bringing terrorism to our region and then lodging operations against them, we have been educated by all this difficult time. And if you come and if you interact with anyone, the impacts of PTM, the only reason PTM came to be was because people had something in the back of their mind. The only need was just a slogan, someone who takes the lead and lead them towards the right direction. Yes, political education and the rest of the areas is much needed, but as long as the place, the area from where we belong, people have been educated by all these events, and almost the education is across the board. Every single child knows what happened to him and what he's supposed to do in the future.
So I have to ask a question because you are not going to let me ask a question. So
do I know you? Just a second. Please don't prejudice that I'm not letting you ask a question.
or maybe you
No,
will not.
wait,
you will
wait,
not.
wait.
But I need to ask a question. The question is simple. You are here against the military establishment of Pakistan, right? That's what I get.
Excuse me.
That's what I get. That's what I get, right? The gentleman even said that the operation in the Fatah was against Pashtun. Let me show you your Twitter account and let me show you what you said. No. We demanded operation.
Please let him go.
We demanded operation
Yes.
in North Waziristan because it's responsibility of the state to
Yes.
establish its right and secure
Yes.
lives of the people.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So how come, I mean, this is hypocrisy that on one side you say, oh, we are demanding the operation, and now you are saying, oh, it is because of the military operation. You are a hypocrite. You are a hypocrite. That's all.
Ask the question, please.
This is the question.
It's all right.
Yeah, this is the question. To let you know, from 2002 till now, every party completed their job. So shut up and shut your mouth.
You made your
Listen, you have to come down now,
We
okay?
invited him. Take out.
But you have to come down. There are rules in this, you have to come
Go
down.
to your seat.
Come down.
I'm not going to
No, you come down here.
In a way, I mean,
Every general is Pashtun. I Pashtun. Zabukhtunima. Asifak Waskay. Zabukhtunima.
You made your point. That's fine.
Wait. He made his point.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So
You made your point.
don't be a hypocrite.
I mean, you made your point now. Now, can all of you please keep quiet? Listen. Man, leave it.
It is a matter of 6 months.
Take him out.
You are the problematic person.
Take him out.
I know you. Yeah, you're not from Pakistan. You're not from Pakistan. Most of them are not even from Pakistan. راجع كنا جواب راكي كنا ديتا وجه كيري كنا أنا غلي ما ديتا وجه غلي شيء كنا ديتا وجه غلي شيء.
Just a second. Wait, you made your point and okay. No, I'm chairing, you're not chairing, he's not chairing.
Yes.
Wait, please.
Okay, can you turn? You need to turn that off.
Don't disrespect.
Yeah, you need to turn that. You made your, yeah, you need to turn that off.
Now,
If go back to your
wait.
seat.
Okay, leave it. Okay, wait.
Jawab
Ek
rakhi,
minute. Can you look at me? You made your point, finished, right? Let him answer.
I'm letting him answer.
No. Okay. Ek minute. Can you please leave me to deal with it? You know.
Please, I will answer him.
Wait. Let him answer and bear in mind. What they are doing is what you did, which is when I asked you that I'll give you the opportunity, you started shouting. Wait. That's what you did, and you know that. Can you ask a question? Leave it. Can all of you keep quiet? This is what I've dealt with whenever I've dealt with Palestinians and Israel. Half of it is manufactured. Leave this. Let him. He asked a question.
What manufacturer?
Can you? I'll tell you what.
What
Now,
is this manufacturer?
I'll tell you.
This is manufacturer.
You ask a question and let you answer the question.
Yeah.
Let him answer.
I will answer.
All of you, please.
Answer. Let him answer.
I would like to answer, but I will also like to keep a bit
Yes.
quiet for some time when I answer.
Yeah, I'm
Please.
quiet.
This is not a dialogue.
Yes.
Not a dialogue.
Yes. Let me answer him. Yes.
Sorry, sir, can you
This is
also
my
reiterate
speech.
the question so that everybody
Please.
can understand the question?
Please,
Because
let me answer him, please.
He's smart enough
Yes.
to answer.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
dealt with various bigger things than these questions. Let him
Yes,
answer.
yes, this is my pitch because we were left on the mercy of terrorists from all over the world by the Pakistani state for more than 15 years. Was the Pakistani state sleeping? And as long as the tweet is concerned, yes, my demand was before the PTM was to launch operation against the militants, not against the markets, the homes, and the properties of the Pashtuns.
This is the
living there.
militants? These are militants?
All what they have done is, they have destroyed the markets, they have taken away, they have stolen the goods in the shops, in that markets, they have stolen the blankets, the fridges, the air conditions in our homes.
These are militants, right? A drone attack. This is a drone attack, which you approved. Like,
He's answering.
One more thing. I have submitted a question in National Assembly of Pakistan that please provide me the details of all the militants that have been killed or injured or arrested in that military operation. The state of Pakistan and the National Assembly and the Defense and the Interior Ministry has failed to answer me
Who are
till
you?
now.
Who are you? This is the military, right? This is a military base.
You made your point.
There are 67 children inside this madrasa killed by drone attack. Drones are the only messiah for the people of Waziristan, killing the high-profile militants. So the killing high-profile militants are 67 children, right? This is another one.
Could you please leave? Could you please leave? Wait. Sir, you asked a question. Could you please leave?
I don't want to leave. If you want me to leave, what do you want us to do?
Okay. Can you leave it?
Sorry, sir.
Thank you. See, that's
Why should I leave? They are making...
No, I'll tell you what, because I have told you. And I tried to ask him, and I'll ask him to leave.
Sorry, sir. But I didn't make it. Look, everyone...
Instead of making things difficult, why not?
Yeah.
Can you please come? You're making me uncomfortable. Leave it.
Why should I leave?
I'll tell you why. You're threatening me. I feel threatened by your presence. I feel threatened by your presence. I feel threatened by your presence.
They are threatening me.
I feel threatened by your... Can you please leave?
They are threatening me.
I'm the organizer, and all the events that I have the right to ask you. I feel threatened by your presence.
Okay.
Thank you.
You are threatening me.
I feel threatened by your presence.
Okay.
Leave. Thank you.
Leave the security. I will walk in 30 seconds.
No, okay.
When I say
Wait outside his leave. No, okay. He's leaving. Let him leave. Please don't make any noise.
Just
You will
let
create problems for us.
quiet. Let him.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
You can go. I'll be there in 30 seconds.
They'll buy it outside. Fine. And can you all please stop? Wait. Let him have 30 seconds and he'll go. Because I feel. Thank you. And no. And please don't. So
the
thank
PTM started with Nakibullah.
Thank you.
Son of bitch.
Back to you. Now, wait. Let's calm down. Let me have water now. Okay, let me give you a context why we have to patiently shout. I'll explain to you. Wait. You know, we are UK University. It's important that, and I've had that in the past, you know, if one person creates trouble and we react, reaction might be the right one, but the moment it becomes disruptive, the security will think, oh, this is a big headache, and next time with this kind of event, it will be asked to scrutinize 10 times, right? So I'm just telling you why I always ask people not to shout or protest, because of a he will say I was bullied by you all and bullied by me, and then we complain, the university will start looking into it. So this is how things function. And individuals like him want trouble so that there are no future events like this. Just be careful, that's why I'm asking. Yes, okay. There was a question, then I will come to you all. The first one was one with maroon sweater there. Yes, you, please. And please keep it brief and no sloganeering. Yeah.
Okay,
I need sloganeering, but it's okay.
How PTM is different than ANP, first, and secondly, who was the genius who invented the slogan, "Jino Deshat Gardi hai, Aise
Well, VTM is a civil rights movement against the war, against the atrocities imposed by the state. ANP is a political history with a very long, a political party with a very long history, and VTM is not a political party. And as long as the creator and of this slogan is concerned, there are too many people who are claiming it, that it's we who have invented this slogan. But I don't know that who was the one. But it's a bit, it's very old. It's not new. It's almost I think 50. Yes, it's very old. So I really don't know. Too many people claim it, but I don't know who actually made it.
Okay, thanks. So we'll come to don't we? Yes, the two people here. I'll come to you later. Here. Yes, two of them. Yeah, keep questions like that. We'll brief and we'll have that. Two of you.
Thank you. My name is Prakash, and as you mentioned that you are the only person who has challenged the leadership directors. I think there are dozens of organizations who challenge the leadership directors and all the other panelists. My question is that your most of concern is relevant to the military establishment and leadership director, as you mentioned. But how the critical parties in parliament are supportive to your manifesto, especially the political parties who are representative of Pashtun, Baloch and other suppressed community in the parliament. And second part of the question is that the slogan is being raised here. We all believe that there is a huge sacrifices of our security forces when it comes to against war against terror. I think it's not appropriate way to demand our right. The people who belong to the Pashtun community, Punjab, Sindhi and other communities, they are also fighting, they have lost a life in the war and terrorism. I think you are the person who can differentiate your mission instead of just labeling your worthy as Pashtuns worthy.
Thank you.
The first part of your question.
Other political parties like Baloch and other parties, how do they relate to your movement?
Yes. Well, first of all, the slogan, it is not a PTM slogan. We make it very clear, it is not a PTM slogan. Yes, people come in or rallies and they chant this slogan, but it is not a specifically slogan made by PTM. The political parties in Pakistan, we have discussed all these things with Afzaal and almost most of the demands specifically about missing persons are almost the same, and we are very much agreed on presenting a bill. The bill which I discussed in my talk was later on I shared it with Afzaal, and he also said that we can jointly present it. The rest of the political parties, PMLN is very much compromised. PTI, it is like, what will I talk about them? But People's Party, yes, Bilal Bhutto has been very much supportive, and he has always supported and talked in the favor of PPM.
Okay, and the question next, and then I have to go here.
My name is Tanvir. I come from Pakistan Civil Services, presently posted in Quetta. My question to...
It's real? It's fine. We have an option. But this extends to show you how important the event is, how important voice is, right? Just remember that part. It's a disruption which we will have to implement. Please don't tell me what I should have done. I know how to feel. I'm the chair, not we have to start leading the lead. Someone to lead them. After them come back and it's over. People use to disrupt events, right? But as you would have found, and we were getting upset with that what that person was asking, Mohsin and PTM have dealt with 100 times worse things, and they're capable of handling it. So at least trust them and trust me when we're dealing with it, and don't stop into that organization problem. Now, make questions from there. Thank you.
Mohsin, my question is your and Ali Wazir's inclusion in the parliament. I'm sure it has made a difference, because in civil service, I come from Pakistan Civil Service, there's a huge majority that respect you. A, because you are representative, your people have voted you in and you have a mandate. And B, your demands are not anti-state demands. No one can, even if I want to, I cannot term as an anti-state demand if I know a bit about law and the constitution of Pakistan. And not necessarily if I hate army. We don't hate army, just we want to make a peaceful environment for our future generations to come. So what plan in foreseeable future do you think your inclusion in the parliament, yours and Ali Wazir's, would bring to aware the people and to take PTM to the next level? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are trying our level best to inspire people, to talk what is the reality, and we are trying our level best to force and influence people with our dialogue to talk about the civilian or the parliamentary supremacy. The problem is there was a very strong perception in the minds of all the political parties that it is only possible with the support of the deep state that we can make it to the parliament. This friend who just went out, I think it would have been great if you would have sorted out a tweet which I tweeted a day before the election. And in that tweet I said that the people of North Waziristan are going to break the status quo of deep state politics in Pakistan tomorrow. Because I have been watching the enthusiasm and the support of the people, and I think that instead of all the murders and all the campaign, all the support on the other side of the entire state machinery, with the support of my people, with the strong support of my people, I will make it. this thing, I want to progress and I want to educate the rest of the country, the rest of the parliament, taking my case or our case as an example, that if you have strong support and if you have a strong narrative to convey to your people, there is no doubt that people will not support you, even if all the state machinery is working against you. So we are trying to influence the members from other political parties. We have worked on many, and I think if there is a trickle-down effect in the parliament, or if there is any kind of impact from the role which we are playing in the parliament, which might lead toward the supremacy of parliament in Pakistan, I think that will be a great achievement. There are too many hurdles. It's not an easy job because the system, at least the system currently, is very much controlled. I was mistakenly made a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And when we had the election of the chair and we elected a chairman for the standing committee, and when the pictures of that meeting went viral and Mohsin Dawar sitting in the meeting of Foreign Affairs Committee, after 2-3 days I got a message from the Secretary Office of the Speaker that there is assembly which is saying that Mr. Mohsin Dawar should be removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee and transfer him to the Committee of Libraries. And when I contacted the Speaker of National Assembly, he was not even aware of that. And so these are very petty things, like which prove that how much controlled the system is. But you know, from somewhere you have to start. From somewhere you have to start. If from the very start you think and you assume that this is a very difficult job, and I'm doing like taking the power back from the military establishment, giving it to the parliament, is almost difficult. I think everything is possible, and with the hope that we will make it, we are doing our best for that.
Thank you. The next one is, I shouldn't say with beard, but gentleman's beard. Yeah, I didn't want to do that either. By the way, I was thinking committee of library would be a good thing because you can get books that are critical, radical, and challenge the system. That's something to do there.
Thank you very much. My first question is, Pakistan has a very good history for the tolerance of democracy, of the order and law, as we familiar many the democracy leaders been killed or murdered anonymously. For example, Pakistan Star President Tajpabi in jail. What was his blame for this? How was his peaceful struggle for democracy, for Pashtun right? And Armanduri, what was his job? He was just killed for struggle for democracy in Pashtun right, in all the victims, right, for all the victims, mostly the Pashtun more victims. And how do you see your life in danger and the Pashtun Manzoor life in danger in future? How long do you think you will be alive in Pakistan? Second, my second question is, I watched one of the review of the Parvez Mishra. He admitted Taliban are our hero, who destroyed the Fatah in part of the keeping killing since 100 years, Mata Pashtun, both at the border, that mean that what he said, our hero, we nurtured him, took the prominent member of the Taliban, what's called, he died, this, what was this one? Not Maloma, this one, another one, what is behind the perception of the nurturing terrorism, the Pakistan military establishment? What the purpose is behind it? Yeah, not only in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India, the recent event show Pakistan just not a military in terrorism, exporting terrorism.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. In fact, there are two things. How long do you think you are going to live in Pakistan in terms of your life and danger to life? That's the question. And second is around Pervez Musharraf admitting or proudly admitting or saying that, of course, Taliban is the asset and those kind of questions. That's how Pakistan has nurtured terror.
Well, the first thing is that we have challenged this danger. Yes, we put our lives in danger, and that's how ATM was possible. If we would have thought like by doing so, I still remember when the Taliban was ruling the entire FATA in my area, whenever I used to speak personally against them, people used to tell me that you're going to be killed very soon. And don't talk against them, and don't speak against them. They are very much powerful, they have too much strength, and they have too much weapons. But I still, went with the same narrative. No, the person, an individual or a group have no right to impose its ideology over the rest of the society. And the next phase is when the military took over all these things, the same things kept happening. And my family members, my friends, they kept telling me that if you speak, you will be disappeared. But I always used to tell that someone has to take the start. Someone has to take the start. And even if we keep quiet, I have shown them many examples of the people who never, criticized of whatever was happening at that time, but they still got killed. They still got killed. So my belief was that keeping silent is not the way out for us. We have to speak, and we have to go ahead. We have to challenge all these things, and that is the only way out. The rest is, all over. Many questions. The person in white shirt there, he has to raise his hand. White shirt there.
First of all, thank you for coming here and enlightening us about PTN. I basically have 3 questions.
No, keep it to one, please, because we have many others. Make it unfair. I know they were asking, but now we have short answer.
I'll try to shorten.
Yeah, make it one with 3 questions.
One big question in 3 parts. So the first part of my question, or the first 2 parts of the question, related to the context in which PTM came into being. And the first is that the government decided to merge KPK, ex-FATA with KPK. And I want to know what is your opinion on that, or what do you think about that? And the second context is basically that the US is withdrawing from Afghanistan, and the Pakistan military is building a fence on the border with Afghanistan, which wasn't a border, or so to speak a soft border for the last many decades. So I want to know what is your opinion on that, and how do people living in the area not being used to a border between the 2 countries react to this, or what do you think about it? And my last part of my question is related to PTM's inspiration, because we've seen in Pakistan that this is not the first movement of rights. People of Balochistan have also been issues with the state, or so to speak, like the military. And we've seen over the last few decades that the situation in Balochistan has gone very bad, and a lot of people have been anxiety now. They're talking about the situation. So what is your inspiration in terms of how you want to take PTM, and what have you learned from the previous movements in Pakistan, specifically the Balochistan issue, which has gone worse because a lot of people have taken up arms and are talking about separation, so they don't even get enough support from masses.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I think it's again 3 questions.
And
the first one is
not to answer questions.
The first one is the merger of Fata with the Pashtunkhwa. Well, my answer is personally, most of the members of PTM have different ideas and different opinions about the merger of Fata with Pashtunkhwa. I used to be politician of PTM. I used to be a strong supporter, even Manzoor and Ali Wazir. But when PTM, after the PTM, we remained silent on this issue for a reason that there was a difference of opinion amongst the members of PTM. Some wanted it to be a separate province, and some wanted it to be a part of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So that's why we kept quiet on it. Secondly, the fence. Well, I think fence is not something which can solve the problem. You have to start from your own self. Like there are people, the crackdown which nowadays we are watching is that the crackdown which has been out nowadays, after the too many. So that crackdown is not in Waziristan, that is not in Fata, that is not in on the border with Afghanistan. That crackdown is in Kashmir or somewhere else, or somewhere in Punjab. So I think fence is not something which can solve the problem of terrorism. If you want to solve the problem of the terrorism, you have to change your policy. And secondly, this fence has divided brothers living on each side of the border. I belong to that area. I have seen people, real brothers, who have left, who have been divided by this fence. And I have seen people who have homes at the one side of the border and the agriculture land on the other side of the border. And this fence has made very, very difficult for these people. And as long as controlling the terrorist activities are concerned, nobody can stop. If there is support within the state, even offense cannot stop it. We have seen the case of Tahir Dawar. Instead of this, a police officer who was suspiciously killed, his body was taken from Islamabad and he was found dead in Afghanistan. Now the question is, who transferred him to Afghanistan in the presence of this fence? So fence is just not a solution. The last thing is that Baloch, yes, they have many grievances. The demands and the rights they are demanding must have been ensured before they have taken the arms. But they have a different way of fighting for their rights, and PTM is completely non-violent, and our demands are within the constitutional parameters of Aijaz. Few days ago, a delegation for dialogue was announced by the provincial government, and someone from media, they called me and asked me for the opinion of PTM about the dialogue. Well, my response was that being a citizen of the country, I already had an agreement with the state in the shape of constitution. If that constitution is implemented in actual literal spirit, I think the demands of PTM are automatically addressed.
Okay, we have no point raising hands. We have only time for 2 questions. I have identified people that have been raising hands. So no, the one with beard, just because I had beard and I met people with beard, so please ask questions.
The CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, as a heaven designed for the oppressed nations, the Pashtun and Sindhi nation as also reservations on CPEC as well. PTM has always spoken for the human rights of Pashtun nation, but what is PTM's stand on CPEC project? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, without ensuring the rights of Baloch and Pashtuns, I think it would be hard for the CPEC to go practically the way it has been designed. I think that's how much simple I can answer, but I will repeat it again. Without ensuring the rights of Baloch and Pashtun, making CPEC a success story won't be possible for the state of Pakistan.
Thank you for giving me an
I think I deserve a question.
In fact, you deserve full attention with him later. You can take selfie also later. There are a lot of people, all kinds of people, so how to understand we have to.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. From your discussion, I can conclude that, like me, you hate the unconstitutional role of army in the Pakistani politics, and same with me. I love Pakistan army, but I hate their unconstitutional role. It is being played by them over the last 70 years in the Pakistani politics. And we know why they play this unconstitutional role. For two reasons: to make their absolute control over the society, and the second reason is their involvement in the commercial business. And recently, we have heard that, I saw in the newspaper.
And question, please.
Yes, I have my question, because it's very pertinent question. They have been entered into the gold business and the oil business. And these contacts are rewarded by the selective government, which is currently in the power. So my question is to you, as a parliamentarian, you have a bigger role. Now, we all are Pakistani, you are Pakistani, and you believe in the constitution of Pakistan. So why not you put up a struggle for the against the unconstitutional role of Pakistan army in the parliament, and tell them who the hell are you to be in the businesses, commercial businesses that would solve your problem and my problem.
Do you want him to get killed sooner?
Thank you. Well, I think that's what I have been doing since my elections since I've been elected as a member of parliament. I haven't been doing anything else. I'm going on the path which you have suggested. We are also on it. We are already on it.
Thank you. Now, okay, thank you. Look,
if you just have a glimpse on my Twitter or Facebook, I am sharing almost all the questions which I put in National Assembly. Most of them are related to that. The motions which hardly most of the times comes on the agenda, and the legislation, the enforced disappearances, is also about the same thing. So whatever you have suggested, we are already on it.
Okay, now Riyadh, I understand, I'm sorry, but we have to cut it short because of time, right? I have a question for you based on the observation here. Why do you think there are so few women in the audience? And the reason I'm saying, just count the number 10, right? I mean, diaspora. What does it say? I know you've talked about women. So what can the diaspora do more? And none of the question was from a woman, right? You notice that. So what can you, as leader of a movement, do to make sure that movement is relatively more gender neutral?
Well, you are very much right. And I think the society from which we belong, we are trying to break the status quo. And I think Ayesha in her speech mentioned some of the names which are on the forefront of PTM. PTM has always given a very prominent, a very big space to our female members, and we believe that only a joint struggle of the men and women of a society can make it a success story. Without the participation of female, I don't think so that we can make it possible. We are trying on it, and we try to improve it more.
Okay, now, okay,
His constituency was one of the least voted female constituency. He could have easily been voted member of parliament, but state does allow it. So it does show that
I think that
elections
Mohsin
are
Dawar had
free.
we talked about that yesterday.
Your constituency was one of the constituencies where women least voted.
Ah, yes, beautiful. Very good question. The problem is that...
You were neglecting me.
Yes, please. The problem is that I think the ratio of votes polled by women was, I think, 9.934, something like that. And it is still a miracle. If you study, if you come to know about the context of why it happened, there was a deliberate attempt, a deliberate planning to contain my support from each and every angle.
You were still allowed to sit in the parliament.
I'm saying that I'm explaining that.
And Shaukat Yousafzai was
okay.
What I'm saying
let
is
him
that,
answer.
Let me answer.
And you can ask him later.
Yes, you can repeat it. The polling stations for female, like the problem was that some of the villages which were 30 kilometers away from the cantonment may have their polling station in their own village, but the polling station for female were deployed at the cantonment. So they have to come all the way from 30 kilometers, and they have to get off the cars in the hot weather of July and then travel for 1.5 kilometers inside the cantonment to reach the polling station. So this was something which I challenged before the election. My press conference is on the record. I challenged it in the Peshawar High Court that there is a very big discrimination with women, that the polling station, they are not being provided the polling station at their doorsteps. So just imagine, I don't think so that any society, a man would go 30 kilometers away from his home to poll a vote. Now just consider how it became possible for the female members of the society to travel all the way. Now, as long as you have said that Shaukat is a right, the problem was that the ratio was, sorry, I misquoted the ratio. The ratio of female votes was 9.93. 9.93. And Shaukat Yousafzai was somewhere beyond 8. When this case circulated in the media, there were two other cases. One of the PTI member elected from Khyber Agency, one of the PTI member elected from Digha. One had a ratio of 4 or 5% and the other had a ratio of 8%. In my case, it was 9.93, and under the General Causes Act, something above 0.5 will be taken in round figures, and it was already considered 10. An application was filed against me in the Election Commission, and they said it is almost, fulfilling the prerequisites. And secondly, the Election Act also says if the percentage is not achieved because of any kind of agreement, or if someone forcibly stop a woman from casting their votes, only in that case that law can be. In Shaukat Yousafzai case, there was an agreement between the political parties that female will not vote. This was the reason that he was disqualified. In the case of Rudatu, I have been speaking again and again. I had the press conference. My writ petition in Peshawar High Court is also on the record. So the Election Commission was in no place to object on the political forces in North Waziristan.
Ayesha, 3 comments, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to, well, first of all, I remember Mohsin was live tweeting during the election about the difficulties that the women in his constituency were facing in voting. So I think he's explained that point really well. But as far I am a little bit disappointed that there weren't too many women present today and that none of the women did ask a question. However, I have to make the point that apart from what I already spoke about the PTM women activists, recently, just about a week ago, we had the Women's March in Pakistan, which became extremely controversial. And the PTM actually issued a statement that was very supportive of that march, which is a lot more, they've gone a lot further than a lot of the other established political parties. None of them have issued any statements to that effect. And I think what the leadership says is very important. I have never heard the PTM leadership express any kind of misogyny. Sure, there are social barriers which Mohsin spoke of which need to be challenged. But when the leaders of the PTM speak, they do not express any misogyny. To the contrary, they actually speak for women's rights. They speak about encouraging women to participate. What we recently, if I give an example from the PTI, the ruling party, the one person, Fayazul Hassan Chauhan, who they recently fired because he made comments against Hindus, and certainly he should have been, laid off for that reason. But he had said a whole bunch of things about women previously, which were more or less ignored. So I think what the leadership does or what people in positions of authority do and say is very important. And that's where I find the PTM's role in this very constructive when it comes to women's rights.
Thank you very much. To conclude, I'm just making some, then you can meet him later and take selfies, meet him, you'll have more time, that's why it's finished soon. What you talked about, and you highlighted something which we could not pick up, and I know a lot of you had questions we couldn't do. You talked about education, and I think someone asked you for education. You said even young people know they're educated. Okay? So education around rights doesn't come from what they read in textbooks. In fact, many textbooks don't even talk of human rights. Education comes from the experience of being oppressed and marginalized. Right? That's one. Second thing I took away from what we're talking about generally about PTM is it's a struggle against dehumanization, where there are certain people, certain communities, they get treated with suspicion and they get dehumanized. And then it also showed us the reaction is there is strong, I would say, hyper-nationalist anxiety about what you're doing, which seems you're doing something right. That goes and triggers the alarm, because that's what he triggered the alarm downstairs, right? Anyway, they're dehumanized. Then someone talked of the slogan is slightly problematic or not. The way I see that, I know some of you have to justify that I'm not anti-military, I'm just anti something, right? The point of the matter is, think of it, why any democratic context we even need to say that we love the military. The fact that we will say it implies that there's something wrong there and actually the way I would frame it, in any democratic context, right? We're not in any democratic context, democracy is about anti-militarism. It's not again anti-military institution, but it's about civilian control over military, and I think that's the biggest figure you're part of. I think that's why there's so much of reaction against you. The angle of audience, I understand your reaction to that person there, and I hope you'll understand. I respect some of the anger, because if your people, your relatives have been disappeared, or you have experienced disappearance yourself, and someone comes and starts belittling your experience, you will get angry. So anger is understandable, I understand it, but you also have to understand, for the sake of balance, we have to keep quiet, how to handle that. So I understand the anger, and I understand the frustration, because what PTM is sort of coming out of the anger, But the way I see the success of PTM is channelizing that anger in a very constructive manner, being very insistent that we are under constitution, because otherwise the moment if you are against constitution, there are other things you'll face problems, but you're doing it in right faith. I think that's the amazing part. Your poise, your confidence, unlike some of you, including me, getting worked up, right? I was amazed by how you do things, right? I thought I'm the one who can manage these difficult conversations. You were amazing, and when I know what you are capable of, and I've read and followed what Pashtun does, in terms of the poise that PTM has, the sort of maturity that you have, and the confidence that you have, I'm sure that comes from your experience of being oppressed, but also experience someone who wants to live with dignity. And in that sense, I think we have to congratulate PTM. You made it very important. And something very important. Silence is complicity. You don't want to be silent. Of course, there is, and I would not want you to die either sooner than others. I've had Kurdish friends being killed by ISIS. That's another matter. But please don't. And in that sense, I think your struggle is for betterment. It's for democracy. That's how it is. Rights-based movement, isn't it? So your politics, the way I understand it, it's based on anger, yes, to an extent, but ultimately it's based on faith. Faith that people will one day see what you're asking for is not only for yourself, but for the wider public. And it's very much based on hope. Hope that we'll have better rights for Pashtuns, hope that we'll have better rights for Baloch, Pashtuns, Sindhis, Punjabis, and everyone else possible in Pakistan. And my hope is that your movement will inspire and encourage similar kind of movement in the entire region, so that we have a better region, not region that's dominated by a deep state of military kind or deep state of RSS fascist kind, but one that's based on genuine democratization and freedom for people and dignity. On that level, I would say that you have been amazing, your movement is amazing. Thank you so much, sir. We all thank Pakistan for that campaign, and Ayesha here. Thank you so much, and Osama and Asim and Tanvir, everyone here. And of course, my student volunteers. And you could see it was not easy for them to do things, sort of maybe to sign up. I'm grateful to two different Annas here. Maria, I had Amina, all different. Thank you so much. Without you, and it's a fact, none of this would have been possible without my students. That's what I think.
I think we must thank Dibyesh for an excellent moderation and intro and everything, and also for the fact that when we first were trying to have this talk arranged, he was the only person who was completely willing. We had approached others before who didn't quite come through, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you, of course, for your patience and your patience.